Contemplations before chanting. The Sangha is invited to go back to our breathing so that our collective energy of mindfulness will bring us together as an organism, going as a river with no more separation. Let the whole Sangha breathe as one body, chant as one body, listen as one body, and transcend the frontiers of a delusive self, liberating from the superiority complex, the inferiority complex, and the equality complex.
The Buddha Jew shines infinitely, enlightened for countless lifetimes. The beauty and stability of Buddha sitting is seen in mountains and rivers. How splendid is the Panchali, how beautiful the light that shines forth from Buddha's brow, illuminate the six paths to the Naga Pushpa assembly. We will go to continue the true teachings and practices. We take refuge in the Buddha, ever present. The Dharma truth is infinitely lovely, the precious words of Buddha, like fragrant flowers floating down from the heavens. The wonderful Dharma is plain to see. It is recorded luminously in three transparent baskets, from generation to generation, handed down in 10 directions, so that today we can see our way. We vow to learn with all our heart. We take refuge in the Dharma, ever present. The Sangha truly is infinitely precious, a field of merit and good seeds. The tree, ropes, and begging bowl are symbols of freedom. The mindfulness trainings, concentration and insight support each other in mindfulness day and night. The Sangha dwells and is the foundation for us to realize the fruit of meditation. With one heart we come home and take refuge in the Sangha, ever present.
Good morning, dear Thai, dear Sangha. Today is the 8th of June. We're in the Assembly of Stars, Lower Hamlet. Can everybody hear me well? Yeah. This morning it's my to talk about the 5 Skandhas, which has already been introduced in the previous talks, a teaching of the Buddha, and in particular to talk about how when we try to grasp the 5 Skandhas and make it a self, we suffer, and how we can learn to see in such a way that we can let go, allowing the 5 Skandhas to be and to live through the 5 Skandhas but not be caught in them. So the Buddha was very out of compassion. He offered the 5 Skandhas as a kind of model for saying this is how we can see ourselves in terms of our body and mind. So as we've learned, the Skandhas are 5. They are the body, rupa in Sanskrit, feelings, sensations, vedana, perceptions, samjñā, I think, mental formations, samskara, and consciousness, vijñāna. So we see that we are made of these 5. Thai used to give could draw it on the board when I get up, the image of an orange, 5 segments. So then our life is an orange with 5 segments: body, feelings, perceptions, mental formations, and consciousness. And if the Buddha made these, distinguish these aspects of ourself, it was to help us to practice. It was not to make a theory or a complex model, but it was to be practical and to be able to help us contemplate what is going on in us. Therefore we have the Satipatthana roughly corresponding to the contemplations, the 4 establishments of mindfulness. We talk about mindfulness of the body first, and we move on to the feelings, and then the mind. And in the objects of mind, there is an invitation to practice awareness of the 5 Skandhas, the 5 aggregates as well. So they come in many of the sutras, references to the 5 Skandhas. And the guided meditations connect with our Skandhas. So in terms of for instance, the body, we're invited to get to know our body and get to know what the body consists of, different aspects of the body. And the contemplation is to become aware of the body in the body. It's another way also of saying that it's not like a scientist trying to observe as the subject and the body as the object, but rather the body as the object of your contemplation and the mind are one, become one. So the subject and object are actually together. And we know, in fact, it's very difficult to separate the body and mind. It's just a skillful means to create these distinctions, because we actually see the body and mind are one. What is going on in the mind is reflected in the body, and vice versa. And the body contains all of the information about what has been our experience. There is a book called The Body Keeps the Score. I've been told it's very good. I haven't read it yet. But it's a way of saying, nothing is lost. And in our experience, so sometimes simply meditating on what is going on in the body can be the doorway to finding out what has happened to us and what is going on for us at a very deep level. And as we've learned, the body is somehow very miraculous, and it's a community of trillions of cells. It contains all of the information of evolution, right up to our more recent ancestors, grandparents, parents. And so we become part of this continuum, this stream of life. And we find ourselves in this body, which was transmitted to us through time and space, and here we are. So when we contemplate our body, for instance, in total relaxation, we can notice this body actually is a gift from my ancestors. Sometimes we're invited to contemplate your hand and see this is also your mother's hand, and to place your hand on your forehead in a way like a mother would when you have a fever, just to experience that mother's love. And you can actually feel the energy of love in your own hand of your mother. And if your mother was too busy to take care of you when you were sick like that, then you get to have another, to generate that for yourself and experience the mother's love through that meditation. So we discover that when we contemplate just our body, our physical body, we find that we are much more than we thought. We contain our ancestors. And it can be a very, it's very obvious when we look at physical features. Oh, I have my mother's smile, or I have my father's eyes. We can see these things. But there is much more transmitted than just physical looks. And so when we do the contemplation of the body in the body, we first of all just get in contact with the physical sensation of being in this body. But we're aware that it can take us on a very interesting journey. In the meditation we just had this morning, we're invited to become aware, mindful of the breath, which is again to bring body and mind together and to calm the body. So, in the Buddha's teaching, he wants us to offer us a way. He wants to offer us a way to relieve our suffering at the very deepest level. But that starts with taking care of what is going on here and now. So calming the body is very important, and becoming aware of the body. We may also becoming aware of the feelings, the second skandha. We're in touch with pleasant feelings, sometimes, unpleasant, and what are called neutral feelings. These were the three categories of feelings that are talked about, for instance, in the Satipatthana. So we just recognize, I have a pleasant feeling in my body. Actually, the Satipatthana asks us to recognize whether the pleasant feeling or the unpleasant feeling is arising from the body or from the mind. What is its origin? And sometimes it's mixed, or it's not clear. Sometimes we may have a feeling of being, for instance, hungry, but we think, I've eaten a lot already today, and maybe we're actually thirsty, or maybe we are, somehow there is an emotion going on and we want to take care of that emotion with food, and the body says, I'm hungry, as a way to, because it knows that eating will somehow, the experience of eating will help dampen the slightly unpleasant emotion. So if we're not in touch with ourselves, we can mistake signals. We can mistake a sensation telling us, we need to eat more, go to the refrigerator. So it's useful to become aware of what is going on and to distinguish where a feeling is arising from, in order to truly take care of the need. Because maybe we do need food, maybe we do need sleep, but it can also be that we're needing to take care of something else. So when we bring our awareness to our feelings, we get to see what is really going on. in terms of mental formations, and classically there are 51, and Thai has added some. They're divided into wholesome, unwholesome, and indeterminate. There's also other ones called the 5 universals and 5 particulars. But they, again, by distinguishing different kinds of mental formations, it can help us name things that are going on in ourself. And if we have mindfulness present, in fact, even what is termed an unwholesome mental formation, such as anger or fear, loneliness, sadness, maybe shame, jealousy, even these termed unwholesome, when we are aware and we are able to be with them and recognize them, they're no longer unwholesome in the sense that they no longer have to lead us on a destructive path. What is really meant by unwholesome is that they lead us to unbeneficial states. They lead us to suffering in us, and we are likely to cause suffering outside. But if we are present, if we have mindfulness there, we can actually recognize and take care in such a way that we learn more about ourselves. We learn to handle that emotion, not be pushed around and overwhelmed by it. And we actually get to see what is the real need, what is something behind it, something behind that emotion. Something very useful for us to know. Once we have learned the art of mindful breathing, generating mindfulness, which is considered one of the mental formations, we bring mindfulness up into our living room along with the emotion that is going on, and we learn how to embrace, be with what is going on. We can stay stable. When we learn how to stay stable with it, we can go through a kind of storm, and we come through the other side somehow stronger, and we have less fear, precisely because we have not had to do the usual running away from the difficulty or covering up, suppression. So this gives us a feeling of we can handle this, we can be with this, and the next time an emotion arises, we don't have the second arrow, the kind of extra fear that this emotion will cause us suffering, will cause others suffering, we will act on it, react, and we may be overwhelmed. But we know what to do to take care. So this feeling that we have a path to be able to handle our mental formations, to take care of them, we're no longer afraid, and these so-called unwholesome mental formations become okay. They become, in fact, part of our growth, our healing. They contain useful information. They allow us to see what maybe we need to take care of. For instance, if we have anger arise, when we have anger arising in us concerning somebody, and we choose to breathe and be with that feeling of anger, we stay away from the story about the anger. And in touch with the energy of the anger, it can also be felt in the body. It will be reflected in the body, maybe as heat in the stomach area. For different people, different things. You experience your head gets very hot. Some people describe all sorts of ways in which anger manifests in their body. But you stay with that and it can change and move. But you stay present with what is going on, with the energy of the emotion, and you breathe. Breathe in and out mindfully. And you don't have to do anything else. Yeah? And then you discover that the impulses that the anger was telling you this story, and it was triggering us lots of perceptions, and you were wanting to act on them and speak badly about the person. And then when you calm down, you realize what was really triggered in you was some suffering, and you can see clearly the situation. You know what to do to maybe help the other person, know what happened for you, but in such a way that you want to restore the relationship, for instance, instead of wanting to punish the person. So taking care of emotions can help us in our relationships. And we learn we don't have to run away from ourselves. So the Buddha's teaching was, yes, we have suffering, and the way out of suffering is to take care, to face, to not run away, but to be with and accept. But we need to learn how to be stable and stay with, in order to stay with the suffering. So, as well as investigating the 5 skandhas, we're also learning how to handle the 5 skandhas. How to take care of the body, take care of the feelings and the mental formations. And when we practice meditation, mindfulness of breathing, for instance, we have an opportunity to try to experience what it means to let go. Let go of grasping. Aware of the body, in the body, but allowing the body to be just as it is. And we can ask ourselves the question, what is preventing me from experiencing, from being with the experience of what is really going on here and now? Am I constricting, contracting around something? Am I grasping onto something? Can we really allow the breath to be just as it is? Breathing is an automatic physiological phenomena. We breathe in and out naturally, automatically. So we don't have to, when we become aware of the breath, there is a tendency to then try to control it somehow. Can be quite subtle. So learning, can I let go and just have awareness, experiencing the breath, but not somehow controlling it. So this is an opportunity to practice the art of letting go of grasping. It's difficult to let go of something unless you know what it is you're trying to let go of. So it's very important to contemplate what is going on so that we see what it is. We get in touch with ourselves to the point where we see, this is what I'm holding. A bit like when you are aware of your posture, and then at a certain point you realize your shoulders are hunched, and you say, I relax my shoulders. But until that point, you weren't aware that you were hunching your shoulders. So when you become aware, you say, I'm hunching my shoulders. Now I can choose to let go, relax. It can also be the case in the mind when we have an idea that is causing us suffering. Sometimes that idea is somewhat hidden from us. We don't realize that's what we've told ourselves, but it's got a grip on us, and we have a grip on it. It's like we're attached to that idea. Learning how to identify what we're attached to in terms of knowledge and ideas, and experiencing what it's like to let go. How to let go of an idea. You may have an idea that it's very important for you to do things in a certain order today, to fit certain things in, and you have your to-do list, and then they say we make plans, and that makes God laugh, or something like that. So sometimes we have to let go of what our plan is in order to meet the reality, what's really being called for. But we're so fixed on something. We have an idea that we will be happy when we get this thing done, or when we achieve a certain thing. We have ideas of happiness, and learning to recognize that we are putting on hold happiness in the present moment for when we get this thing that we've said, this is our idea of happiness. So if we can let go of the idea that this is when we will get happiness, we may have a chance to encounter happiness in the present moment. So our teacher gave us the mantra, this is a happy moment, to say any moment we choose, we can make a happy moment. By recognizing that right in the present moment, we may not have achieved this thing, may not have got rid of this thing, but we do have conditions. You know, there may be some suffering in the present, some difficulties that we are encountering, and yet we can identify that there are conditions for us to celebrate and to say yes, these are conditions for happiness, and it's good to stop, recognize, and enjoy those conditions, to say thank you to those conditions, and then to be able to say this is a happy moment. So the 5 skandhas, they also include our senses. And when we are, for instance, as part of our body, we have the organs of the eyes, which allow us to see form. So connected with the 5 skandhas is the 18 realms, where we have the 6 senses of 6 sense organs, 6 sense objects, and the 6 sense consciousnesses that arise from contact with the sense organ and the sense object. And that is considered to be the whole of our experience in the 5 skandhas. That is our world, what we experience. So, for instance, our eyes see the tree and the different colors, and we get the consciousness arising of eye consciousness that allows us to recognize this is a tree, and those are the different shades of green, and we're very happy to be able to see and have that faculty. We may become disenchanted with our 5 skandhas and think, our senses are not enough. For after all, there are other animals that can see even more colors and areas of the spectrum. We can't see infrared. Mosquitoes can see infrared, for instance. That's how they home in on us when we're in bed. And so we think, I should be able to have the infrared sense as well. And, as a result of us developing the gene that allowed us to have 3 colors and all of the palettes of the mixtures of these colors, we became so good when we were back in the days when we were some kind of monkey, that we could see all the right exactly when the fruit was ripe, etc. And we didn't need the sense of smell so much. So we actually lost some of our sense of smell to the point where our sense of smell is pretty low down. Like I think it's said a dog has its sense of smell is 1,000,000 times more than a human. So we actually lost a sense of smell because we got better eyesight. Interesting. And so our 5 skandhas are limited. Our sense organs are limited. And yet as humans we've developed all sorts of technology to be able to expand our sense capacity to sense things. So we have microscopes, we have telescopes, and we can see, picture the nebula through radio waves, we can see all sorts of things, we can see into atoms. We can pick up ultrasound and microwaves, we've the whole range of the electromagnetic spectrum. And yet none of that technology, that expansion, if you like, of our senses has led us to more, to helped us directly with our suffering. We've got some knowledge, like of quantum physics, which is very interesting. We discover more wonders in the universe. So it can be nice. It's not, We can use these extra things to help us with medical things, etc. But finally, at the root, it's not really helping us with our suffering. We don't have the capacity to. We now can communicate with somebody across the world through the telephones, etc. But it hasn't reduced the suffering that we experience. It hasn't actually helped us go deeply and really understand what is going on in this experience we call life. And why is it we're suffering? So the Buddha, without any of that technology, was able to get to the root of it. So we don't have to be too proud of our 5 skandhas, because we know there's many other animals that have different amazing faculties, but at the same time we don't have to be despondent that we're so limited by these 5 skandhas, because it turns out that we have the capacity within this body, within these 5 skandhas, to be able to get in touch with the truth, with the reality of ourself, to overcome suffering and to experience happiness, to experience life in all of its wonder, and to experience the reality of interbeing, to experience our connectedness to all of life. It is through the 5 skandhas that we can discover how we are connected to the whole. You are not the 5 skandhas and the contemplation of ourself, our body, even though it's a very tiny little speck in geological time and in the universe, and yet this is our doorway to connecting with the sort of life without boundaries. This is our opportunity, this within these 5 skandhas. This is our doorway to discover actually that we are much more than the 5 skandhas. So there's the paradox. You know, but it's through connecting with this body, these feelings, these perceptions, these mental formations, we have the opportunity, this consciousness, we have the opportunity to discover we are much more than that. But the way out is through, is in. So the way we need to come back home to ourselves. We are looking for some sense of security, some sense of permanence, something that we can rely on. And it leads us to really identifying a sense of self with ourselves. We want to feel there is something we're anchored, that our life is anchored on, and we have an idea, it's me, I am the thing. So we have this sense of a self, and we wonder, when we contemplate the 5 skandhas, we're sometimes looking for, like, where am I in the 5 skandhas? Yeah. What can I grasp onto that will, because the world out there seems so uncertain, and other people are getting sick and dying, and apparently I might get sick and die too. What can I hold on to that is going to, So then we also have the idea that, I'm going to get sick and I'm going to die, so there must be something that continues that is me. And we look at the 5 skandhas and we think, is this me? But then we find that the 5 skandhas are impermanent and they're constantly changing. So we feel we can't necessarily find that me in the 5 skandhas. So we maybe think, maybe the me is somehow connected with the 5 skandhas, but it's not actually the 5 skandhas. Or I kind of need these 5 skandhas for this life, but I'm not them, so I must be somehow something other. But this isn't the way to the freedom, to kind of look for ourselves somewhere else. The Buddha's teaching was that all conditioned things, all formations, the body, the feelings, they're in a state of change and flux, so we cannot say that there is a self that is unchanging, that is permanent. And it turns out that accepting that, letting go of the idea that if I could find this permanent thing, then I'd be okay, then I'd be safe, then I'd be... that is just an idea that we grasp onto. And if we can let go of that idea, we can enter into the stream of life, which is changing and moving. And we discover that we are the five skandhas, which is constantly changing, and we're connected to much more than that, which is to say, all of life. And in that sense, there is this, there is nowhere to fall. If we can make the experience of being connected to the whole of life and including seeing that the interconnection with the whole cosmos, So we're discovering our interbeing nature. We can touch something, we lose that fear of dying. There was something that was me, and now there is not. So it's okay to say, this is me, this is my, this self, if we are aware that this self that we call is made entirely of non-self elements, like and it's also impermanent, constantly changing. But that's not so easy to do. There was people in the past that actually inserted lines in the sutras to suggest that we could only be totally free when we were free from this body, from these five skandhas. So nirvana could only be experienced after death. And this became what Sister Annabelle termed a fly in the soup of the teaching. And it was somewhat sad in the sense that there were even monks in the Buddha's time that killed themselves, committed suicide, thinking that was the way to liberation, that's the way they could enter nirvana. It could not be done. The five skandhas were an obstacle. And the five skandhas were said to be the five skandhas were the grasping that was preventing the experience of nirvana, of total freedom. But in fact, it was a kind of understanding of the teaching. It is true that grasping is preventing us from experiencing true happiness and freedom. But it's not the skandhas themselves that are grasping that need to be got rid of. It's our grasping. It's the grasping of the skandhas. Hoping that, we can find the self in there. So, in order to let go of that grasping, we have to be aware of what is taking place in us, that there is this grasping taking place. We have to become aware that we do fear impermanence, and that is causing us to grasp. The more we get in touch with life in us and around us, and experience and sort of observe the impermanent nature, the more we see that it's not something to be frightened of. That we can, have fun in the stream. Imagine you're holding onto a rock and there's this water rushing by you, and then you let go and you're just enjoying going down the stream. Kind of water sport. Allowing yourself to go with the flow. To be with the flow. When we see how we're connected to the whole of life, we can more easily let go. In fact, it's when we let go of the idea of a separate self, a permanent self, that we can experience happiness. And the Heart Sutra says, having seen that the 5 skandhas are empty of a separate self, he overcame all being. And we see that all phenomena, all dharmas, are marked with emptiness. There is nothing, in a sense, to hold on to, but at the same time there is nowhere to fall. Because things are empty, there is no separate existence. We are connected with everything. So this is the invitation, this is the kind of carrot that would entice us, okay, I'm going to try and make that experience. Because at a certain point, the grasping, we recognize we're causing a lot of suffering for ourselves by trying to grasp. But it might not be until the point of dying that we realize, okay, I have to let go now. There's no choice. But that would be a shame to wait until then. Many people report that when they let go and the near-death experiences, they come back and they say, "Wow, it was wonderful to let go and to experience letting go." And there's a kind of people tried their best to report this sense of, I realized I'm much more than I thought. Yeah. There's much more going on. we are much more than our 5 skandhas. What we are is also the sum of our actions. Our actions of body, speech and mind arise from live our life in the 5 skandhas. And our actions, whether we are aware or not, are having all sorts of effects. And they're on their own journey, these effects, like ripples. So when we become aware of that, we become a feeling of more responsibility for our actions. How our actions are affecting others, and we have also more a sense of what I do actually matters. It's not meaningless. It's important. Even it may seem like a drop in the ocean. I can't be sure about that. And I want my continuation to be beautiful. And so I want to take care of my actions of body, speech and mind, the thoughts I produce in this lifetime. And how I talk to people, it matters. How I think about things and how I act. And the mind of love is generated, it's in us, and we find action through the 5 skandhas. The mind of love, the bodhicitta, which wants us to experience and offer love, to understand things deeply and to serve, to contribute to life. It wants us to act. So there is a sort of dimension of action. And it's interesting to look at our actions. It's almost like another skandha, like contemplate. We our actions are always in relationship. So all the time we're interacting. So we're constantly affecting our environment, and our environment is constantly affecting us. And our actions of body, speech and mind, and the way we're being affected by it also conditions the soil of our consciousness. And there is a teaching also about consciousness, one of the 5 skandhas, which shows that reminds us that our consciousness is both individual and also collective. And likewise, the results of our actions come from not just individual karma, but collective karma. That is, karma is the word for action. So when we see that we are both part of we're both individual, but we're part of a collective, and we see that our destiny is connected to the collective as well. We don't just we realize that we cannot just be practicing for ourselves. Even selfishly, we have to say we're practicing for everybody, because we know it's not, our destiny is interconnected. So we need to support each other. And it turns out supporting each other is a way, and offering support also gives us, we get the same back somehow because of this nature of interaction, of interconditioning. So to be generous is to experience a gift. And when we make those experiences, we don't, hold on to things so much. We feel more free because we realize that life is an interchange, and we can be more free. And it becomes, we don't need to grasp things for ourselves, for our survival, personal survival. But, it's almost like a metaphor for experiencing letting go of the self in the sense of the Heart Sutra, like recognizing I'm empty of a self. When we see that we are empty of a self, it doesn't mean there is not suffering. We still suffer, but there doesn't need to be a self to suffer. But when we let go of the self, there is much less suffering. When we're not attached to this is happening to a self, and we trust more. That we can let go, and we don't have to feel so identified with the situation. Because we're not attached to a self that is permanent. That is, So these sutras and teachings, they can help us recognize how we are identifying with a concept of there being a self, and help us to let go. There is a sutra called the, I'll just check. Yeah. The Anuradha discourse, it's in the chanting book, some of you are familiar with. And in that sutra there is a monk called Anuradha, and there is some recluses that go to him, a group of people practicing from another tradition, and they ask him, so we've heard that your teacher, the Buddha, the Tathagata, as he was sometimes called in that time, the Tathagata has reached the fruit of highest awakening. So we would like to ask you, dear Venerable Anuradha, what has the Buddha said in relation to the 4 propositions? And Anuradha sort of scratched his head. What 4 propositions? Oh, come on, the 4 propositions. After death, the Tathagata continues to exist. Or after death, the Tathagata ceases to exist. Or after death, the Tathagata both continues and ceases to exist. And the 4th one, after death, the Tathagata neither ceases nor continues to exist. So within these 4 propositions, they basically felt that they covered all the bases. There's nowhere else, it has to fall within one of those. It's kind of the system of logic. But the truth and reality, it doesn't fit nicely into logical systems, as we know. Life isn't quite like that. And certainly the Venerable Anuruddha couldn't report. He said, well, the Buddha, as far as I know, has never spoken about these four propositions, and has never said anything about what happens to him in terms of these. And they assumed that the Venerable Anuruddha must be a little bit simple, a bit unintelligent, because it's ridiculous idea that the Buddha wouldn't have talked about this, because this was considered to be a very kind of fundamental logic. Or he was a very young monk, and so but they went away and they muttered to themselves, like this. And then the Venerable Anuruddha went to the Buddha, concerned that he wouldn't be misrepresenting the Buddha's teaching. And the Buddha did a bit of Zen magic on Anuruddha. He asked him some questions. He said, okay, I'm still alive. I'm here, right? Where do you find me? Do you find me in the body? In this body? Do you find me in the feelings? In the mental formations? In the perceptions? In the consciousness? In other words, the five skandhas, the body-mind? Can you find me there? And to every question, Anuruddha had to say, no, I cannot say the Tathagata is that. I cannot find him there. So then the Buddha said, can you find the Tathagata outside those five skandhas? A body, feelings, perceptions, mental formations, consciousness. Nope. Can't find you outside either. So then the Buddha said, well, since you can't grasp what is the Tathagata, where he is, and I'm still alive, even right now, what makes you think you're going to work out where I am after I've died? Are you really going to find me in those four propositions? And there are some Western scholars that think that the Buddha was dodging the issue still. But the Buddha was wanting to, if he was asked those questions directly, would remain silent. They didn't consider them questions that should be answered, because they embedded in the question was the assumption of a permanent separate self. So he would have had to have raised them to that level of awareness before, to show that the questions, there was a fallacy in the questions. And the Buddha said, these questions don't help, actually. I only teach about suffering and the way out of suffering. Maybe they can help if we go that deeply into them, really understand the fallacy behind them and understand the nature of no self. And Thaya said, actually, if you want to know if the Tathagata continues to exist, you only have to see that the Sangha now, all the Buddhist culture, and Thai said one time, that somebody offered to, and said, I'm going to build, and maybe I think they did build, not sure, somebody tell me afterwards, a stupa for Thai, for after death of Thai. A stupa, something to mark a kind of very beautiful building to commemorate and say this is Thai, and then to put Thai's ashes in there and say this is. And Thai wasn't so keen on the idea of being remembered in one place with this stupa and having people come to worship his ashes. He said he'd rather have his ashes nourish the soil, but also he recognized, well, you're probably going to do it anyway, build a stupa. So if you're going to build it anyway, then my condition is you have to write on the stupa, I am not here. But Thai is very compassionate and gave a clue, like a treasure hunt, like where to find me. I'm not here, but you might find me in your way of walking. You might find me in your way of breathing. And yesterday, Phap led the walking meditation. I gave some words of encouragement. And he said, Thai likes walking. Thai likes walking mindfully, meditation, but he's not physically in his 5 skandhas here with us, able to walk. So we walk for Thai. We enjoy the walk for Thai. We walk with Thai, and Thai Phap went further and said, in fact, let Thai walk, be the walking, do the walking for you. You don't have to walk. So as I was practicing walking meditation, I was inviting Thai to be present in me, in my 5 skandhas, and he was there, more or less, to the degree that I could open up and allow and connect myself. I could experience, Thai enjoying the steps, Thai in my 5 skandhas. We experience our interconnectedness in many ways, and we should not be limited by the idea that we have of the 5 skandhas. This body is impermanent, subject to change, it gets sick. There are times when we really enjoy being in this body, where we go hikes on the Appalachian trails, we get very healthy, and we really enjoy this body, and that's wonderful. And there are times where we get sick, or we have an accident, and this body can be a source of pain. There is a teaching given to Anathapindika when he was sick and dying. From Shariputra, Ananda and Shariputra went to visit Anathapindika. the lay bodhisattva that served the Buddha and the Sangha for so many years and practiced. Yeah, he wasn't just offering to the Sangha. And they offered him a practice that he hadn't done before. And even he was in a lot of pain, and the pain was increasing, and he was close to death, because he died shortly after Shariputra and Ananda left him. He cried with happiness for this meditation. And the meditation was to recognize that, to be in touch with his 5 skandhas, be in touch with the elements of the non-self elements, if you like, of the 5 skandhas, the water, air, the earth element, fire element, to be in touch with the sense organs described, the sight and the hearing and all of these, and not be caught by them. And to know that, to say, I am not limited by this body. I am not limited by these feelings. I am much more than that. And yet, that is where we start. That is our door to discovering that, to be in touch with. This life we have is very precious. These 5 skandhas are a gift, and they are precious to us. But we don't have to be caught in the idea that we're limited by this. And Thai, I remember, said also that one day he was doing walking meditation, and he thought, how sad if this little body is and these 5 skandhas are all Thai is. But he knew that actually through his teachings and through his compassion and through his life, he has entered a little bit into the hearts and minds and 5 skandhas, since we also walk and we also breathe, of many, many people, including us. So we continue that. And his consciousness element was very palpable when you were close to Thai. You felt the mindfulness energy could permeate, almost physically permeate, when you were close with Thai. And now he's not here, and yet the Sangha here, and even the rocks and the earth of Plum Village, somehow the energy is still there. There's a peaceful energy imbued in this place. Sometimes we experience that, and we kind of think again about our notions of what is our ideas of what is me, what is Thai, what is the other. So there is a certain mystery to life, and it can be wonderful. We can look at our loved ones and say, I don't know you. You are a complete mystery and amazing. And that can free us from this very narrow, we've boxed them to this set of ideas we have about them. Based on experience, they're like this, they're angry, we have judgments about the others, we have judgments about ourselves. So freeing our mind from a narrow idea. It can be a very important and good thing to do. Allowing the mystery in. But with that we also, we have to accept uncertainty. We have to accept that death comes unexpectedly, as in the Bhadda Sutra. Which also invites us to contemplate our 5 skandhas. Says when you are considering your body, the practitioner, he or she does not say, this is me, this is my body, this belongs to me. We let it be free, as we're contemplating it. Let it be what it wants to be, let it be what it is. Trust in life and trust in when we get connected to ourselves. That's all we actually have to do. We get connected to what is going on. We stay with it, unflinching. We get stable and we breathe. We stay with what is. We be present to what is, and things get revealed. Right? As we just stay and we watch, recognize what is going on in our body, in our feelings, in our mental formations, our perceptions, our consciousness. We try to recognize the perceptions that are maybe causing us to suffer, including the perceptions of a separate self, but also ones just that are more to do with daily life, perceptions about the other person, perceptions about ourselves. What are we telling ourselves? I am no good. I will never be able to do this, to realize this. And we limit ourselves with an idea we have that is unchecked. Be it about the other person or be it about ourselves. So the question to drop in to our store consciousness is when we see that we're attached to a perception, is, am I sure? We know that actually all our perceptions are somehow wrong. You can say where there is a perception, there is deception. Because what we perceive through the body and the sight and the mind is always filtered by our past experience. We're always projecting actually onto reality what we think reality already is. So we have to be very humble and careful with our perceptions. If you look back at something that happened in the past, and it's become this knot of this happened and they did this and I felt this and they should not have done that, and this has had this effect on me, and you've got maybe resentment, or maybe you have a complex about yourself because of this thing that happened in the past. But if you look at it and examine it, you may find, what actually happened and what the kind of, how I loaded onto that, all of this judgment and meaning, like I made it mean that he hated me. But actually, he didn't hate me. This happened, he said that, but he was a little bit out of control at that moment. He was suffering. And so your perception, you check it, you question it, and you separate out what actually happened. Okay, I can say that's the fact that happened, but it doesn't necessarily mean all the other stuff that I've attached to it. So that's a way to work with perceptions as well. There's a, yeah. So I'd like to I've been asked to share as well about consciousness as food, so I'll end talking about that just a little bit to say when we have ideas, things that happen to us in the past, and we ruminate on them, we chew them over, like we say a cow chews the cud. We're adding to sort of a negativity in our consciousness. When we're taking in sensory impressions that water the seed of violence and despair in us, that becomes part of our consciousness. So it becomes like a food for our consciousness, and consciousness feeds on its own. It makes a cycle. It kind of continues to ruminate on the things. So becoming aware of how we're affecting our consciousness, which is like the quality of the soil of our garden, is very important to see. Some people feel like you can watch a whole box set of violent series, and you get away with it because you know that's about something fictional and you're separate. But you need to be humble, because you have to know you're affecting the quality of your consciousness. And you're introducing toxins. Yeah. So recognizing how we are, the consciousness as a nutriment. Yeah. I'd like to end with a song because it's very apropos. It's very sort of relevant to the teaching of not grasping the skandhas, the body, not grasping the body, the feelings as this is me, but letting go and recognizing that we are much more than that, and we're connected to all of life. So Phap composed this song, somewhat based on Thay's Gatha, Unborn and Indestructible, and other teachings of Thay. I'd like to offer that to go. Unborn and indestructible, unborn and indestructible, beyond time and space, beyond time and space. This body and these feelings were transmitted to me by my mother and my father, by my teacher, my friends, and all living beings, unborn and indestructible, unborn and indestructible, beyond time and space, beyond time and space. And that which is transmitted is not less than the transmitter, and I who receive the transmission, what am I but that which is transmitted to me, unborn and indestructible, unborn and indestructible, beyond time and space, beyond time and space. I am my mother, I am my father, I am my teachers, my friends. I am one and yet I am many. I am all, I am none. No beginning, no end. Unborn and indestructible, unborn and indestructible, beyond time and space, beyond time and space. This body is not me. These perceptions are not me. And I am not limited by this body. I am life without boundaries, no beginning. I have always been free. Unborn and indestructible, unborn and indestructible, beyond time and space, beyond